Incomes through the last 3 or 4 years.
Question number 3, Metiria Turei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker. Tēnā koutou katoa e te whare. My question is to the Prime Minister, and asks, ka whakatau ai I te kōrero e whakaputaina māna, ara I do not accept the view that we are a deeply unequal country. I do not think the evidence suggests that, and people drawing that conclusion are wrong.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, yes.
Metiria Turei.
Is it the Prime Minister's view that the New Zealand Council of Christian Social Services is wrong to say inequality is worsening when its vulnerability report has found that Māori and Pacific unemployment rates are now 3 times that of Pākehā and rising?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, yes, they could be wrong. The most comprehensive study in New Zealand of inequality is the Household Incomes in New Zealand Trends and Indicators of Inequality and Hardship from 1982 to 2010. It's the most recent data. Actually shows that the gap is narrowing. And the reason for that, and one of the problems with the Christian Social Services report, is if somebody wants to do a proper analysis, you not only have to look at household incomes, not individual incomes, you have to adjust for the household income family size, and you have to look at all sorts of transfer payments made by the government, like Working for Families, New Zealand Super and other benefits. And from the best of my knowledge, that particular scheme didn't do that.
Metiria Turei.
Given that the authors of that report attributed the slight reduction to a blip in investment income for the very richest New Zealanders, how is New Zealand not deeply unequal when the wealth of those on the rich list grew by 18%, but the median income for Māori and Pacific people and sole parents and with children actually dropped over that same period?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, firstly, I think I would take numbers on the rich list with a grain of salt, with the greatest respect. Secondly, the reason why I take the particular report as being the most comprehensive is because it is. It's the only report that actually looks at household size, household income, and adjusts for all of the payments made by the government. And I think if one looks at the overall situation in New Zealand, we are pretty equal compared to many other countries. We're on par with Australia and Canada, and we're a lot more equal than countries like the United States and Mexico. 3/4 of all New Zealanders pay no more than 17.5% in tax. If you earn under $50,000 and have 2 children in New Zealand, you pay 0 tax. That strikes me as being pretty fair.
Metiria Turei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Prime Minister expect that workers at our leading listed companies will agree that New Zealand is not deeply unequal when their CEOs earned on average 22.5 times more than their salary and granted themselves pay rises of $50,000 last year, while their employees received an average rise of just $500?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I can't speak for those particular workers. I mean, I'm just not in a position to do that. But what I can say is the government delivers a tax system and a redistribution system which, on the surface of things, at least to me, looks pretty fair. That's why we go out there and support Working for Families when it has a cost in the order of about $2.8 billion. That's why we provide benefits support to over 300,000 New Zealanders. It's why we put in billions of dollars when it comes to the accommodation supplement. It's why we do a number of things in this country to try and support those who are not in a position to support themselves as well or need an extra helping hand. On balance, I reckon that looks reasonably fair.
Metiria Turei.
What conclusion does the Prime Minister draw about inequality when, according to the Kids Can Foundation, 1 in 11 children in the lowest 4 deciles are hungry at school? 208 schools are currently using the Kids Can food programs, and there are nearly 200 schools waiting for Kids Can to be able to feed their kids too.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Firstly, let me say Kids Can is a good program. Secondly, it's a good example of where the private sector can play a role, because you've got a number of companies that have been stepping up and assisting that. And thirdly, if you go and have a look at the children in New Zealand that are in the lowest income households, a lot of those are in welfare-based households. Not exclusively, but a lot of them are in welfare-based households. That is why the government has a program for investing in people to try and assist them off welfare into work. And we know that in New Zealand, if you work 20 hours a week or more, then you will be substantially better off than you would be if you were even on the DPB. That is how strong the incentive payments are when it comes to working for families with the likes of the in-work tax credit. So in my view, if we really want to help people in New Zealand, we'll actually help them into work.
Jacinda Ardern.
Prime Minister, does he consider an increase in food-based hardship grants from 280,000 to roughly more than 500,000 to be an indicator of an increase in hardship?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
So I can't verify the numbers from the member. She could be right, she could be wrong, I don't know. Secondly, yeah, okay, we'll get there, no rush. I've got plenty of time. I know we're all off to Samoa, but we've got plenty of time to get our way through it. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the issue around those people who are getting hardship payments probably indicate an increase in unemployment, and that is the reality of a recession. But it's also, again, why the government puts so much support into trying to help people, whether it's a 9-day fortnight and a variety of other mechanisms that the Labour Party opposed.
Metiria Turei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. How can his plan for job growth, which he referred to earlier, be the answer when the Labour Department warned him in December last year that almost all the job growth that he's talking about will benefit professional men, and the unemployed, low-skilled workers and women will miss out almost completely?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, I reject that analysis from the member. I mean, if one goes and has a look at the number of people that were on the unemployment benefit 18 months ago, it was 69,000. Today it's around about 50,000. If one goes and had a look at young people who are on an unemployment benefit, they were 23,500 18 months ago. Today they're 13,500. If one wants to really create employment for New Zealanders, the way to do that is to have an environment that supports the creation of jobs. And everything that happens on this side of the House does that, and everything that happens on this side of the House is opposed by Labour and the Greens. And that's because Labour and the Greens are against anything that would create jobs for New Zealanders.
Metiria Turei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order. I want to hear Metiria Turei.
Given that 2 out of every 5 children who live in poverty are in working families, would he agree, as a first step, to support Dr David Clark's bill to increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour for New Zealand's most poorest working families?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, no, and the reason for that is because we run the risk that people will lose their jobs. So sure, some people might get paid $15 an hour, and many other people, on the advice we have, would end up on the dole queue. And I simply say this, that in the last 4 years we've heard from Labour and the Greens that the minimum wage should be $15 an hour. When they were in government, they weren't saying that, were they?
Metiria Turei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order. I want to hear Metiria Turei. Metiria Turei.
Why does the Prime Minister continually refuse to address the growing gap between rich and poor when even the World Economic Forum has said in its Global Risk Report this year that while reducing debt is important, severe income inequality is a greater global threat?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, all I can tell the member is that if she wants to go and look at the household incomes in New Zealand, trends and indicators of inequality and hardship, this is the most comprehensive report. I know the member doesn't like it because it actually does the job properly and looks by household, by members, by redistribution. If they want to look in isolation, which is what the Greens always do, when they go and look at the tax package, they leave out the bits where people pay it and count the bits when they get something. But that is the voodoo economics that comes out of the Green Party. And Mr. Mr Speaker, it's no different from when the member put out a press release a few weeks ago criticising the government for the OECD report on income inequality, Divided We Stand, and then forgot to mention, by the way, the report was commenting on what happened in 2008 when they were propping up those losers over there.
Question number 4, Jackie Dean.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Canterbury.